If there are infinite Earths, fiction doesn't exist, it's just tales from another world. What up, Nerd Squad? Welcome back to Top 10 Nerd. I'm your host, Connor Monroe, and the guy who killed Batman's parents actually saved a lot of lives. We all have our favorite superheroes, but unless they can really shake things up, reading the same people gets boring after a while. They introduce new heroes to keep us on our toes and to eventually kill off so they don't hurt the moneymaker. But what are some of the coolest new ones? That's what we're exploring with this list of the top 10 newest superheroes part 3. Hit like and subscribe because we have daily nerdy content coming your way and because it will make me smile. Thank you. And at 10, HAZMAT. One day while making out with her boyfriend, Jennifer Takata stops when he falls into a coma. It turns out powers she didn't know she had activated, releasing enough radiation to cause the coma. Unluckily for her, her powers activated during a time where Norman Osborn was the head of S.H.I.E.L.D. So they found her and took her in for rigorous testing against her will, in the efforts of making her stronger and to use her as a weapon. He locked her in a suit that caused her to constantly leak enough radiation that anyone who would come close to her would die. But after escaping and being brought to the Avengers Academy, she developed a friendship with Metal, which abruptly ended when he was murdered by Arcade. Recently, she's been able to get some degree of control over her abilities, which lets her work outside of the suit, but she's had a tough life as all superheroes have, and she currently works with Captain Marvel. In a 9 Fast Track, Mina Dewan was a Star Labs employee until a Speed Force storm struck her, turning her into a superhero. She was able to pick up on her abilities quickly, and was able to keep up with Barry Allen physically and mentally. She was an excellent partner for the Flash, and even helped to mentor the new Kid Flash. But she was in a tricky situation. It appeared like she had been killed by Godspeed. She had returned as an agent of the Black Hole, a villainous organization that is currently being explored in the CW show, so we may see her pop up in later episodes. But that will take a different route since in the comics Mina and Barry dated, so they won't really be able to include that as a story element in the show. Do you watch the show? And do you think that Fast Track will make an appearance? They haven't had a new speedster in a few seasons after all. Not including Earth 90 Barry, that was the original TV series. But with only half a season left, they'll have to fast track the story. I'm sorry. And at 8, Jane Foster. Jason Aaron's popular Thor run led to one of the biggest twists or shakeups or earthquakes, whatever you want to call it, in Thor history. Thor was briefly deemed unworthy of wielding Mjolnir, but in the wake of this moment, it fell to Jane Foster. She took on the mantle of Thor in stride as the 9 realms raged in war, but the reason that was given for her worthiness was something that would even make Odin himself cry. She was dying of cancer. Every time she transformed, it would reverse the effects of her chemotherapy. Being Thor was killing Jane, but that wouldn't stop her, hence why she was worthy. She understood that Earth needed protecting, and she as Thor could do that. She was such a popular character, in fact, that they are adapting her role onto the screen, with Natalie Portman returning as Jane in Thor Love and Thunder, where she will reportedly use a restored Mjolnir, since the MCU one broke. And at 7, STRIX. Silly rabbit, STRIX are for kids! I'm not sorry about that one. The Court of Owls storyline that launched Batman into the New 52 is held in high esteem. And directly through these comics came Mary Turner, aka STRIX, a former Talon/immortal assassin for the Court of Owls. And she's gone severely underrated. As a child, she was horribly disfigured by a bomb attached to a balloon. That's like if Pennywise was a criminal with no powers, like what the actual hell? During her time as an assassin, she faced Batgirl, ultimately letting her go even though she had won, because they both wore masks. She rarely appears outside of her creator's books, but every time she shows up she's a delight to read. She reformed in an effort to atone for her past, and has been included in the Birds of Prey and Secret Six. While hardly anyone knows her, I know I didn't until I was researching this list, but she is still a wonderful character that deserves to be taken out of limbo and shown more in larger storylines. Gabrielle Kinney is a young clone of X-23, which basically means she is a clone of a clone. There has got to be a term for that. There is actually the possibility of that now though. Typically when you create a clone in real life, they would have some form of abnormality. But scientists at the Riken Center for Developmental Biology in Japan managed to clone 24 generations of mice from a single one. They were even able to reproduce on their own. So there could be up to like 23 more clones of Wolverine. Oh god. There is a point to that however, because she is one of a group of 10 clones of X-23, Bellona, Zelda, X-23 3-Par being a few. She escaped Alchemax with these sisters and ended up getting adopted by X-23, who ended up becoming her mother figure. She possesses the typical Wolverine powers, but with bone claws rather than metal. She also has a pet Wolverine called Jonathan, which just makes her that much better and honestly the sweetest thing on this list. She was unfortunately missing in Jonathan Hickman's X-Men relaunch, and now she goes by Scout, but I think that Honey Badger is the cuter name, so I'm gonna keep calling her that for this list. Halfway through at number 5, DEFACER. One of Nightwing's love interests is a reformed criminal. DEFACER was once a sidekick to Pigeon, a small-time criminal who Batman and Robin caught and arrested along with DEFACER. After she was caught, Shawn Sang was sent to restart her life. After being released, she relocated to Bloodhaven and joined the former villain support group known as the Runoffs. Probably set up by Batman in all honesty, just like the superhero support group. She lived happy in recovery even though she never trusted any superheroes. Then Nightwing showed up and Shawn got arrested on suspected murder. She asked Nightwing if he could help clear her name. After he did, they started dating for a time. She even suited up to help her boyfriend on the occasional criminal takedown. Unfortunately, they didn't last forever. She even got kidnapped by Deathwing. But she was still a cool character, and despite the odd name and backstory, was important to a character we all love. So she should be important to us too, right? And at 4, Robbie Reyes. Robbie Reyes was a young mechanic working in California, and the neighborhood he lived in was plagued by gangs and corruption, which would make several things difficult to say the least. He wanted to move into a safer neighborhood to keep himself and his brothers safe, but to raise the money he entered a street race to win $50,000. But when he got in the lead, what he thought were police started following him. Eventually he drove to a dead end, so he got out to explain himself, but then the men shot him, killing him. They tried to burn the car as well as his body, but his car was possessed by a ghost, which then possessed him, turning him into a new Ghost Rider. He chased after his killers and managed to get some of them, but not all. And as a Ghost Rider, he wants to be more than a spirit of vengeance, and after joining the Avengers, he proves to be one of their most powerful allies, even holding his own against the likes of the Celestials. He even made an MCU debut in Season 4 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which is canon to the MCU because of Phil Coulson, but also because if you watched the show you'd understand why the Avengers were after Loki's staff in Age of Ultron. Getting close to the end at number 3, Bluebird. Originally, it seemed like Bluebird was just going to be a female Nightwing, but she has grown to be much more than a superhero substitute. She is a mix of plenty of members of the Bat family, and makes a pretty big splash when she's thrown into a situation. Harper Row is a young girl living in Gotham's Narrows with her brother Cullen. Seems like a bit of a vampire. They fled from their abusive father and got emancipated, but after randomly meeting Batman, she was determined on joining his team to help him. Her relationship with the Bat is slightly antagonistic but still respectful, which is something else in the DC universe. Batman has mentored many children over the years and somehow they keep joining even though they'll probably die. But none of the hero's other compatriots have really had this kind of relationship, so she fills a role that nobody else has really been able to. It's nice, fresh, and she has a dope costume. It's very similar to that of Nightwing combined with Red Hood. It's honestly dope, realistic to our world rather than the DC universe. But I just don't know how she turns her neck. And at 2, Finesse. Anything you can do, she can do better. She can do anything better than you. Since Jean Foucal's power is being able to perfectly mimic anything she sees, a power set very similar to Taskmaster, who she in fact suspects to be her real father. She was recruited into the Avengers Academy while training to be an Olympic athlete at the age of 14, and proved to be one of the most interesting characters, struggling with social situations but always demonstrating skill, since anything the best fighters could do, she could do after seeing it. She always prioritized knowledge over human interaction, thus making things awkward when interacting with others. Same, I totally relate. She also struggles to not cross lines, like when she blackmailed Quicksilver and betrayed X-23. She joined the Academy at the same time as HAZMAT from earlier on the list, but definitely was a more interesting character. She blackmailed Quicksilver using her guess that he was never replaced by a Skrull, and because of this, he taught her everything he learned as a part of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. Interesting, but at least she's smart enough to figure it out. She had graduated MIT before being recruited after all. And yes, at 14. Finally, taking our number 1 spot, Gotham Girl. Superpowers don't really have a place in Gotham City, but with Rebirth, Tom King thought that a pair of superheroes were needed in the shadow that is Gotham City. Everything the light touches is your kingdom. What's that shadowy bit? That's Gotham. The two siblings known as Gotham Girl and Gotham, how creative, have similar abilities to Superman and were the starring attractions of the early Batman Rebirth issues, but their powers had a terrible catch. The more they used them, the closer they got to dying. Similar to Jane Foster, their powers were killing them, and they learned this the hard way. Gotham died because he pushed his powers too far, leaving Gotham Girl alone to fight for herself. Since Gotham Girl was more liked than Gotham, the writers made a good decision, and she eventually found Batman as a mentor who was teaching her how to fight crime without using her powers. That's an incredible story. A vigilante who has godlike powers but is unable to use them without potentially dying. That's more compelling than anything else on this list. It's wonderful and links Batman and Superman more than ever before. There we have it, friends, the top 10 newest superheroes part 3. Which superheroes did you like on this list, and is there anyone you want to see if we make a part 4? Let me know in the comments, and on your way down be sure you hit like and subscribe for daily nerdy content and ring that bell to know when we upload. Thank you all so much for watching. I have been Connor Monroe, and I'll see you in another video.